Now, APIOps Cycles method is, of course, one possible method that you could use with APIs. And a lot of the methods that one might find are actually really good from the point of view of methodology and from the point of view of designing APIs from architectural perspective. Maybe they are not so much related to API products or product management, business modeling, API monetization. Don't get me wrong, you can use APIOps Cycles even if you're not planning to monetize or not totally convinced about API products or product management or not into it. But I think that's the key difference. Also, the key difference is the lean approach, the lean management. You know, the stuff from Toyota and leadership and lean kind of manufacturing and that sort of stuff that takes the waste away from the process. That's lean. And of course, DevOps, for example, was coming from lean. Kanban as an agile method is coming from lean. So these are the kind of differences with APIOps Cycles compared to some of other methods, and also the fact that it's meant to be collaborative. That's why I'm showing this Miro board here, actually. I have collected here a few things before I jump into the actual canvases and the method itself. But here I have some kind of alternatives. So this is one way of looking at things. If you are an architect, software architect, you are looking at this stuff all the time. So you're looking at boxes and arrows and databases and things like that. These are really good. They don't really tell you why this exists from a business perspective. They don't really tell you anything about the, the value proposition, the packaging of the API. How do you provide it to the developers who are consuming it, developer experience, API management. None of it is here in this diagram, except maybe there could be an API management kind of gateway thingy in the diagram, but that's it. So you don't really know what the purpose of these things are. If the APIs are named properly, you might guess the exact kind of point of what this API is doing, but still it's a bit difficult. Now you could have some sequence diagrams or some other kind of architectural diagrams which might give you a little bit more detail, but they're still not giving you the purpose of it. Like, why does this exist? What is the business goal of it? Who are the consumers of it? What is the interface like actually? So there is another kind of set of methods which is more in service design or in product design. So this is a customer journey with some product flavor. So it has some gains and pains in it. And this would be something a specific customer persona would be traveling this journey with all these black boxes, which are meant to be touch points between the service provider and the other kind of product. Well, digital products are almost services, aren't they? So what's happening with the customer and the provider? So this is something that tells us something more about the kind of maybe the business purpose, not necessarily the goals, but at least it gives us some functionality. Now, that's great, and this would be great for example, user interface design or some logical design of an application. But actually, this is kind of good also as a starting point from some API design exercises. We'll use this in a while, but let's first walk here. So we have here a DevOps lifecycle. Now, a lot of people who are new to DevOps don't really know where to start with this and don't know where it ends, obviously, because it's a cycle. But I've used this with some students and people who are kind of new to the field or are technical but haven't really thought of the process side of things and have been working maybe for some years. And they are really struggling with this because it doesn't actually give a lot of structure. As a senior architect, senior DevOps engineer, senior product manager, you would kind of know what this means, at least for some, I hate to say, traditional software with like user interfaces and things like that. But what happens if you have an interface and you have whatever hardware, software, or combo implements that interface? So actually, because it's an interface, because it's an API, which is a little bit kind of removed from the actual software or like the implementation layer of it, which is, you know, coded with some specific programming language and so forth, while the RESTful or somewhat REST-ish API is actually possible to be used with whatever programming language and device. So the point is that this doesn't really give us guidance in how an API should go through these moves, how an API should go through this cycle. And it also doesn't really give us a lot of explanation from the business point of view. I mean, I know for a fact, having worked with a lot of DevOps teams, that you can do a lot of cool things from a business perspective here. You can really automate your like everything and be really fast, really kind of have high quality. You can even have some dashboards and cool things that are showing you some business value. Well, you could, not many do that, but you could. But what about, you know, when you throw in some API gateway stuff, API management, APIs as a thing, how does that work? Because in a lot of cases, especially when there's a gateway, then things change, because suddenly you are not just responsible of the software being deployed, you're responsible of the API being deployed to the gateway in the right way, and the API consumers doing whatever they are doing, which might be in slightly different synchronization with version control wise, business functionality wise. They could even be doing their own innovation, whatever things that are, you don't even know what they are doing with the API. And you need to deal with them same way as you would need to deal with them in a kind of shared service, shared application. There are your users, even if they are not using a user interface, they are your users, but they're just a slightly different kind of users. And it might be that you're only providing an API and nothing else, and so they are, you know, your only users. So the point is that the DevOps lifecycle, agile methodology, a lot of the other stuff that we are used to having if we are software professionals, are not giving a lot of, you know, space for how you should deal with APIs. And definitely not helping, you know, if you're trying to define an API just with user stories, you could do it. Let's put it this way, it is not easy, and it doesn't really cover all the, you know, spaces and places where you should go when thinking of what the API should do and how the data should be handled, or how the kind of other things in it should be handled, how the interface should be designed. Well, let's get to that in a more detail in kind of a short while. But the point is that APIOps Cycles has similar things to it than DevOps. It's not absolutely, it is not just another way of doing DevOps. And APIOps is something that people are using as a term when they actually mean that it's APIs going through a DevOps lifecycle, and there's possibly a gateway there somewhere. So this is not the point with APIOps Cycles. I just want to stress this, because this is not the point. APIOps Cycles is kind of a layer on top of the DevOps with more lean approach, like really lean approach, like DevOps has lean in there somewhere, but this is coming from a slightly more lean approach. And what I mean with lean approach is that it tries to kind of ensure that you are not moving too fast or too slow. So you are moving through the stages in a way which ensures that your APIs are kind of just enough designed, just enough handled, so that you can be sure that the next phase can continue or start after the previous phase has been completed. This doesn't mean that this is another way of waterfall. It just means that you are supposed to do iterations. You are supposed to loop through the method. You are supposed to first launch a minimum viable API and then go forward with it. So there are a lot of lean principles in play. There's even an 8 ways of lean management, lean API management book that is available. But the main point is that this is for APIs. It's just something that can live together with all the other ways of working. Like you have user interface designers, for example, who can totally concentrate on doing the front end stuff and designing great user experiences, while the backend guys are doing their backend stuff, or the integration guys are doing their, their stuff. Hopefully they all fit together. And actually, I think personally, from personal experience with clients and being in an own organization doing these things, I think that this actually helps as a method to tie all these different silos better together. Now, I'm sure you are actually interested on hearing how that's done, and that's coming up next.